There are certain colors that just mean trouble. Hospital waiting room green, flashing red and blue in your rearview mirror. But the worst one? The absolute worst, most soul-sucking color on the entire spectrum is HOA-approved beige. Beige is the official color of "I'm about to ruin your day for no good reason." You don't send good news in beige. You don't send party invitations, or checks, or even interesting junk mail in beige. Beige is the color of cease and desist. Beige is the color of your trash cans were visible from the street for an unauthorized 11 minutes. Beige is, in short, the color of Brenda. I was standing at my mailbox on a perfect Tuesday afternoon, sorting through a credit card offer, a pizza coupon, and something addressed to current resident when I felt it. The stiff, sharp-cornered beige envelope from the Harmony Creek Homeowners Association. I sighed. It was probably about the single weed near my driveway. Or maybe my lawn was 0.2 inches above the mandated 2.5-inch maximum. I slid it open with my car key. It was worse. Official notice of violation. Date: October 26, 2025, to Mr. David Henderson, 114 Juniper Lane. From the Harmony Creek Architectural Review Committee. Violation: Bylaw guarantees unapproved external storage of materials, firewood. Description: a large, uncontained, and messy pile of firewood has been observed on the side of your property. This constitutes an eyesore, is not in harmony with the community's aesthetic standards, and is known to attract vermin. Vermin. I looked over at the woodpile in question. It was a woodpile. I'd had a cord of oak delivered last week from my backyard fire pit. I'd spent 3 hours stacking it, or, mostly stacking it, in a perfectly reasonable wood-like pile against the side of my house. It was neat. It was tidy. It was, for God's sake, wood. The letter continued. Corrective action required. All materials must be removed from public view within 72 hours of this notice, by Friday, October 29th, 5:00 p.m. Penalty: failure to comply will result in an immediate fine of $100,000 and a subsequent fine of $50,000 for every additional day the violation remains uncorrected. The letter was signed in a tight, angry script by Brenda Riley, HOA President. My blood pressure did a little samba. This wasn't just a random inspection. This was a targeted strike. I flashed back to last week, the day the wood was delivered. I'd just started stacking the first few logs when Brenda's silver Lexus whispered to a stop in front of her identical taupe-colored house across the street. She'd glided over, clipboard in hand. Brenda is one of those people who is never not holding a clipboard. I'm convinced she sleeps with it. "That's an awful lot of wood, Mr. Henderson," she'd said. Her smile was a thin, terrifying crescent, like a shark that had just passed its real estate license exam. "Yep," I'd said, wiping sweat off my forehead. "For the fire? Pit. Winter's coming." "The bylaws have very clear guidelines on storage," she'd hummed. "Section 14. I trust you've read them." "I'll keep it neat, Brenda. It's just a stack of wood." "See that you do. We are a harmonious community. It would be a shame to see a fine. A real shame." I'd watched her glide back to her perfectly manicured, fungus-free lawn, her beige pantsuited form radiating an aura of pure, distilled joylessness. And now, here it was. The inevitable beige envelope, 72 hours. $100. Vermin, huh? I crumpled the letter in my fist. "Messy pile," I muttered. attracts vermin. I looked at the wood. I looked at Brenda's house, where I could just see her silhouette in the window. Watching. Always watching. A tiny gray squirrel, a real one, skittered along my fence, stopped, and flicked its tail at me, as if to mock my non-compliance. "Vermin," I said to the squirrel. "She wants to see vermin?" A slow, dangerous, and profoundly stupid idea began to form in my brain. "I'll show her vermin." I uncrumpled the letter, smoothed it out on my leg, and marched across the street. You're supposed to appeal these things in writing, but I was 72 hours and $100 away from reason. I found Brenda where I knew I would, in her front yard. She was kneeling on a little foam pad, surrounded by a small army of tacky lawn gnomes. She was holding a 4-inch bubble level. I am not making this up. She was placing the level on the tiny, pointed red hat of a fishing gnome. "He's leaning," I heard her mutter to herself. "Leaning 2 degrees to the port side. Unacceptable." "Brenda." She jumped, startled, and the level clattered onto the pristine turf. She recovered instantly, standing up and brushing a non-existent speck of dirt from her beige knee. "Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice dropping 10 degrees. "You're on my fescue. Please use the walkway." I took 1 step back onto the concrete path. "I got your letter." "I assumed you had," she said, picking up her level. "Business, I hope." $100 fine for a woodpile? Isn't that a little aggressive, even for you?" Brenda finally looked at me, her eyes as flat and gray as unpainted drywall. "Rules are rules, Mr. Henderson. Your pile is not in compliance with Section 14C. It is an unapproved, messy, external storage of materials." "It's a woodpile, Brenda. It's wood. It's stacked. What exactly do you want me to do with it? You want me to hide it in my living room?" "The bylaws are perfectly clear," she said, as if speaking to a difficult child. "You have several options. You can, 1, store it inside your garage, provided your vehicle can also be accommodated. My garage is full of, garage stuff. Tools, a car. 2, she continued, holding up a finger, you can store it in the backyard, provided it is completely shielded from view from all adjacent properties and the street by a 6-foot, solid panel, pre-approved privacy fence. Your chain-link fence is non-compliant for shielding." "I'm not building a $1,000 fence just to hide firewood, Brenda. That's insane." Or 3, you can simply not have it. You can have the materials removed. Your choice. She gave me that terrible, thin-lipped smile. "You have," she paused, checking her watch, 71 hours and 42 minutes left. I'd get started. I was fuming. This was a box. A beige-colored box. "This is ridiculous," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "It's my property. It's my wood. Can't I just, I don't know, stack it better? Put a tarp on it?" "A tarp!" she gasped, as if I'd suggested sacrificing a goat on her lawn. "Tarps are explicitly forbidden by Section 19A, unapproved temporary coverings, unless for an active permitted construction project. And as for stacking it, the bylaw is for messy piles. It is, by definition, a messy pile." "But what if it wasn't?" I pushed. "What if I re-stacked it? What if I stacked it really well? What if I made it, I don't know, into a cube? A perfectly neat cube. Would that be okay?" Brenda actually had to think about that. Her brain whirred, searching the index of bylaws for an answer. "The bylaws do not explicitly forbid cubes," she conceded, her voice dripping with suspicion. "As long as it is not a messy pile, I suppose it is just storage. But it would have to be neat, perfectly neat. I would be inspecting it personally. And frankly, Mr. Henderson, she added, looking me up and down, I doubt your ability to create anything that meets our standards of harmony. She turned back to her gnome, placing the level on its head with a sharp click. 71 hours, Mr. Henderson. The clock is ticking. I walked away, my hands clenched. Perfectly neat. Not a messy pile. The words echoed in my head. I got to my driveway and looked at the pile of wood. It was just a pile. But what if it wasn't? I looked back at Brenda, who was now adjusting the gnome's tiny ceramic fishing pole. She didn't say how, I thought. She didn't say what I had to stack it into. I looked back at my fence, where that same stupid squirrel was still sitting, chewing on an acorn. He looked at me. I looked at him. He was, technically, vermin. A slow, evil, magnificent grin spread across my face. Perfectly neat, I whispered. Okay, Brenda, you want neat? I'll give you neat. My phone was in my hand before I even reached my front door. I went to a local community forum and typed, "Need contractor. Creative. Good with metal and spite. Urgently." An hour later, a vehicle pulled up that can only be described as a tetanus shot on wheels. It was a 1980-something Ford F-150, but it seemed to be composed more of rust, bondo, and pure attitude than actual steel. The driver's side door was a different color than the rest of the truck, and the muffler sounded like a dragon clearing its throat. A guy hopped out. He was maybe mid-40s, with a magnificent braided beard that reached his sternum, a welding cap pulled low, and a Carhartt jacket that looked like it had survived several small wars. He looked like he could build a working spaceship out of bottle caps and old plywood. He ambled over, wiping grease from his hands onto an already black rag. "You're Dave?" he asked. His voice was a low rumble. "You're Scrappy?" "Phil, but everyone calls me Scrappy," he said, shaking my hand. His grip was like a hydraulic press. "Your post on the forum was intriguing. Creative with spite. I don't usually get those. So what's the emergency? HOA got you for an unpainted mailbox?" "Worse," I said, pointing at the woodpile. "They fined me for that." Scrappy looked at the wood. He walked over, kicked a log. "Looks like a woodpile to me." "That's what I said. But Brenda," I pointed across the street, "says it's a messy pile and attracts vermin. I have 70 hours to remove it or stack it. Perfectly neat." "So, you want me to build you a woodshed?" Scrappy asked, looking confused. "I can do that. Gonna need a permit for a permanent structure, though. HOA's gonna be all over that." "No," I said, taking a deep breath. "No, not a shed. I don't want to hide it. I want to display it. I want to stack it, but I need a frame, an armature. I need your help." Scrappy raised a bushy eyebrow. "I'm listening." "I want to stack it," I said, "into a 12-foot-tall squirrel." Scrappy stared at me. He didn't move. He didn't blink. For a full, agonizing 10 seconds, the only sound was a crow cawing in the distance. I was pretty sure he was going to tell me to get psychological help and leave. Then, his face cracked. A low chuckle started in his chest, then erupted into a full-blown, wheezing laugh that echoed down the street. He slapped his knee, tears welling in his eyes. A squirrel?" he choked out. "Like a rod ent? A 12-foot-tall tree rat?" "A majestic 12-foot squirrel," I corrected, feeling a surge of confidence. And he's going to be holding a giant nut, and I want him pointing right at Brenda's house, right at her bedroom window. Scrappy wiped a tear from his eye. Oh, man. Kid, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've built metal dragons for rich guys in the city. I built a giant boot for a shoe store. I even made a fence out of old Harley parts. But this, he gestured at the woodpile. This is art. This is spite art. It's malicious compliance in its highest form. I love it. I'm in. He immediately switched into business mode. Okay, we're gonna need a frame. Rebar, a lot of it. And a welder. I got all that in the truck. The problem, he said, stroking his beard, is what you said. A frame. An armature. That witch over there, he nodded at Brenda's house, is going to call it a structure. Bylaws say any permanent structure needs a permit, an engineering survey, and probably a blood sacrifice to the HOA gods. But it's not permanent, I said, the loophole flashing in my mind. That's the beauty of it. It's my woodpile. I'll be taking wood from it all winter to burn. It's a temporary functional storage sculpture. It's a fancy wood rack. Scrappy's grin returned, wider this time. Oh, you're good. You're real good. Temporary functional storage. She can't argue with that. It's not a structure. It's a container. A very, very large, squirrel-shaped container. Exactly. Can we do it? Oh, we can do it, Scrappy said, heading back to his truck. We're gonna need to sink some footings, though. Can't have 12 feet of spite toppling over in a high wind. Footings? Is that permanent? Nah, he said with a wave. They're temporary stabilization points, for safety. You gotta love semantics. He pulled out a welding torch, a generator, and a pile of rusty rebar that looked like giant's spaghetti. All right, Scrappy said, pulling on a welding mask. Let's build your rat. The next morning, Harmony Creek was awakened not by birdsong, but by the high-pitched, angry hornet scream of a metal grinder, followed by the thwack hiss of an arc welder. By 9 a.m., Scrappy and I were in my side yard, and my lawn looked like a Mad Max set. We dug 4 shallow holes, mixed 2 bags of concrete by hand in a wheelbarrow, and sunk 4 heavy-duty rebar posts. Scrappy was now welding the main skeleton. This is either the most brilliant or the dumbest thing I've ever done, I muttered, holding a long piece of rebar steady, while Scrappy fused it to the main leg. It can be 2 things, Scrappy's voice crackled from behind his mask. Now this piece here, this is the haunch. We gotta get the curve right. A squirrel's power is all in the haunches. You've thought about this? I sketched it out last night on a napkin, he said, lifting his mask. His eyes were gleaming. This isn't just a job, Dave. This is a calling. This thing was taking shape. It was huge. It was just a metal stick figure right now, but it was unmistakably a squirrel. A giant, terrifying metal skeleton squirrel, already 12 feet high at the ears. Naturally, it didn't take long for the neighbors to notice. Mrs. Gable, my 80-year-old neighbor from 3 doors down, shuffled over, holding a mug in each hand. She was the only other person on the block who openly despised Brenda, ever since a beige envelope incident involving an unapproved bird feeder in 2019. "Morning, boys," she chirped, handing us the coffee. My. Building a new trellis, dear?" "Something like that, Mrs. G," I said, taking the mug. "Just organizing my wood." She looked at the giant metal frame. She looked over at Brenda's house, where the curtains were twitching. She looked back at me, and a slow, delighted cackle escaped her. Ah, organizing. I see. Well, you let me know if you need anything. I've got a lovely, vermin-colored garden hose you could borrow. She winked and shuffled away. We'd just started welding the armature for the giant, bushy tail, when the inevitable happened. "What is that?" Brenda was storming across the street, clipboard in hand, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. She wasn't even wearing beige. She'd escalated to a furious plum pantsuit. "Good morning, Brenda," I said cheerfully. "Isn't it a beautiful day?" "Do not good morning me, Mr. Henderson. That is an unapproved structure. You did not submit plans. You did not get a permit. What in God's name is it?" I put on my most earnest, helpful face. "It's not a structure, Brenda. It's an armature. For stacking. Remember our talk? You told me I had to stack my wood neatly. Well, this is the only way I could figure out how to do it to your harmonious standards. I'm just trying to be a good neighbor." Scrappy chimed in, lifting his mask. "Yep, it's a custom-built vertical stabilization rack. For firewood, you know, for safety. Don't want those logs just rolling around." Tsk. Brenda looked from Scrappy's grime-covered jacket to the metal beast on my lawn. She was sputtering. She was looking for a bylaw, but her brain couldn't find one that specifically mentioned 12-foot-tall squirrel skeletons. It's hideous. It's metal." "It's rebar," Scrappy said. "It'll be completely covered by the wood. Won't even see it. It's just infrastructure." "I am checking the bylaws," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "I am checking all of them. You will be hearing from me, Mr. Henderson, and from my lawyer." She spun on her sensible heel and power-walked back to her house, slamming her front door so hard I saw one of her lawn gnomes topple over. Scrappy and I looked at each other. "She seems nice," he said. "Yeah, a real peach. Think we have until lunch?" "Nah," Scrappy said, firing up the welder. "I give it an hour. Tops." He was right. 58 minutes later, I heard the unmistakable sound of a different kind of authority pulling up. A police cruiser pulled up to the curb. My stomach did a little flip-flop. This was escalating. Brenda was already on her porch, clipboard in hand, pointing at my yard like I was running a meth lab. 2 officers got out. One was older, with a mustache and a seen it all and wasn't impressed by any of it look on his face. His name tag read Krupke. The other was younger, mid-20s, and looked like he was desperately trying not to laugh. His tag read Chen. Krupke sighed, adjusting his belt. It was the sigh of a man who drew the short straw for suburban dispute calls. "All right, folks," Krupke said, his voice a gravelly monotone. "What are we doing here? We got a call from that lady over there about an aggressive metal thing. What's going on?" I immediately went into calm, reasonable homeowner mode. "Morning, officers. My name's Dave Henderson. I'm just stacking my firewood." Krupke looked at the 12-foot metal skeleton. He looked at the pile of wood. He looked back at the skeleton. "You're stacking your firewood," he repeated, not as a question, but as a statement he was trying to process. "That's right," I said. "My HOA president here, Brenda," I waved, and she just jabbed her finger at me, "is concerned my woodpile is messy and gave me a 72-hour notice to fix it. So I hired Mr. Scrappy," Scrappy said, pulling off his welding glove to shake the officer's hand. "Phil Scrappini, licensed contractor. I hired Scrappy here to help me stack it neatly so I don't get fined." Brenda could not contain herself. "He's lying!" she shrieked from across the street. "It's a weapon! It's an unpermitted structure! It's an eyesore! It's going to fall on someone!" Officer Chen finally spoke, unable to help himself. He looked at the rebar frame, taking in the haunches, the long tail, the 2 little prongs for ears. "Sir, Chen said, addressing me with perfect seriousness. With all due respect, is that a squirrel? It's an abstract representation of nature, officer, Scrappy said immediately, his face deadpan. But yes, it's a squirrel. Officer Krupke pinched the bridge of his nose, squeezing his eyes shut for a long second. He turned to me. Sir, is this structure entirely on your property? Yes, sir, every inch. Is it in any danger of falling into the street or onto her property? Absolutely not, officer, Scrappy said, stepping in. I'm a licensed and bonded contractor. That thing is bolted to 3-foot concrete footings. I just set 'em myself. You could hang a truck from that frame. It's not going anywhere. Krupke nodded slowly. He understood. He finally turned to face Brenda, who was vibrating with rage on her porch. Ma'am, he shouted, making her jump. It is on his property. It is not a public safety hazard. It is not a crime to be creative. But, the bylaws, she wailed. The bylaws, Krupke said, his voice dripping with exhaustion, are an HOA matter. That's a civil issue. It is not a 911 emergency. Please stop calling 911 unless there is an actual life-threatening emergency. But it's ugly. Ma'am, Krupke said, so is my brother-in-law, but I can't arrest him for it. Have a nice day. He turned and got back in the car. Brenda looked like she'd just been slapped with a fish. As Officer Chen got in the passenger side, he paused and looked back at me and Scrappy. He leaned in and said, just loud enough for us to hear, honestly, kinda rooting for you guys. He glanced at the rebar tail. Make it fluffier. He closed the door, and the cruiser pulled away, leaving a stunned silence and the faint smell of welding fumes. I looked at Scrappy. Scrappy looked at me. Dave 1, Brenda 0, Scrappy said, pulling his mask down. All right, let's make that tail fluffy. We felt invincible. That feeling lasted for about 4 hours. By 5:00 p.m., the skeleton was complete. It was magnificent. The sun was setting, and it cast a long, squirrel-shaped shadow that stretched across the street, all the way up Brenda's driveway, and just barely touched her beige front door. It was poetic. Scrappy packed up his welder, promising to be back at sunrise. Tomorrow we stack, he'd said, cracking his knuckles. That's the fun part. I paid him for the day, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and went to sit on my front porch to admire our handiwork. I was exhausted, sore, and happier than I'd been in months. I watched a few cars slow down, the drivers pointing, confused and amused. I was living the dream. Then I saw it. It wasn't in my mailbox. This time, it was taped to my front door. Taped with an aggressive amount of packing tape, right at eye level. Another beige envelope. My heart sank. My hand was shaking slightly as I tore it off the door, ripping some of my HOA-approved Hunter Green paint off with it. I ripped it open. She hadn't even bothered with the formal letterhead. This was typed in what looked like 24-point, bolded, angry red Comic Sans. Second notice of violation, and immediate. Fine violation. Bylaw 11A. Unapproved permanent structure. Metal. Description. Construction of an unapproved, unpermitted, and hazardous metal structure. Fine. $500. $500. Effective immediately. Note. This is in addition to your pending $100 fine for violation 14C. You are now in violation of 2 bylaws. A stop work order is hereby issued. Cease and desist all construction immediately. She'd done it. She'd waited until the cops left. She'd waited until Scrappy left. She'd seen the finished frame, and fined me for it. She fined me for the solution to the first fine. "She can't do that," I yelled to no one. "It's a box. She's got me in a box." If I did nothing, I owed her $100. If I did something, I owed her $500. She was just making up rules now. This was no longer about bylaws. This was a dictatorship. The stop work order was the final straw. She was trying to leave me with a 12-foot metal skeleton on my lawn, and fine me for it. The rage I felt was so pure, so hot, it could have been used to power a small city. I pulled out my phone and hit redial. "Scrappy's Metalworks," his voice rumbled. "She did it again," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "She fined me. $500. Unapproved permanent structure, and she issued a stop work order." There was silence on the other end. A stop work order? From her? Does she think she's the city? That's not a thing, Dave. That's just words she typed on paper." "It doesn't matter, Scrappy. She's just going to keep fining me. She's got me. If I stop, I have a metal statue and a $500 fine. If I continue, she fines me more." Another pause. I heard an engine start on his end. "She did not," Scrappy said, his voice suddenly dark, "issue a stop work order on my build." "She did." "All right," he said. "Change of plans. This is no longer a civil matter. This is war." "What are you doing?" I asked, hearing his truck's muffler roar. "I'm coming back, and I'm bringing my big spotlights, and my son-in-law, and a 24-pack of Monster. Gloves are off. We're not just finishing this. We're making it a masterpiece. And we're working all night. Get the coffee, Dave. Get all the coffee." By 10 o'clock p.m., my house was lit up like a maximum security prison. Scrappy had returned, as promised, with 2 massive tripod-mounted work lights that bathed my side yard in 10,000 lumens of pure, spite-fueled daylight. He'd also brought T-Bone, his son-in-law, who was roughly the size of a refrigerator and could, apparently, lift an entire log with one hand. "She wants a stop work order?" Scrappy had boomed, throwing open his truck bed. "She'd better be serving it with a SWAT team, 'cause we ain't stoppin'." And so, we stacked. The thud, thud, thud of oak logs being passed, placed, and hammered into the rebar frame echoed through the unnaturally quiet suburban night. This was no longer just stacking. This was sculpting. "No, no!" Scrappy yelled at me, pointing. "You're using splits. The belly needs rounds. Give it some weight. It's texture, man, texture." We were an assembly line. T-Bone would haul 2 or 3 logs at a time from the original pile. I'd pass them up to Scrappy, who was on a stepladder, fitting them into the rebar cage like a giant 3D jigsaw puzzle. He was an artist. He used the flat, split logs for the fur on the back and tail, angled just right to look like a pelt. He used the big, round-cut logs for the haunches and the shoulders to give Barnaby, we'd officially named him Barnaby, some real muscle. My hands were raw. My back was screaming. I was running on nothing but caffeine, adrenaline, and pure, unadulterated spite. Every log I placed was a tiny, woody screw you to Brenda. By 2 o'clock a.m., Barnaby was 80% complete. He had a body. He had a proud, bushy tail that curved over his back. He had haunches. He was beautiful. And of course, that's when Brenda lost her mind. Her front door flew open. "I am calling the police. You are violating the noise ordinance. It is 2 o'clock in the morning." She was in a pink, fuzzy bathrobe, her hair in a net, her face a grotesque mask of fury in the harsh glare of our work lights. I, in turn, grabbed the $500 fine from my pocket, held it up, and yelled back, "Clock's ticking, Brenda! I've got a deadline to meet. You gave it to me, just trying to get in compliance." You! Ugh! She literally stomped her foot and retreated inside, no doubt to dial 911 with a trembling, rage-filled finger. 10 minutes later, the red and blue lights were back. It was Krupka and Chen. I'm pretty sure they were the only two cops on the night shift. Krupke got out of the car, and his face looked like it was carved from a single, very tired piece of granite. "Sir," he started, "I don't even know what to say anymore. It's 2:15 a.m. We're getting calls about, well, this." Then he saw it. His eyes went from my face to the thing looming over us. It was no longer a skeleton. It was a squirrel. A giant, solid, wooden squirrel. "Holy," Krupke breathed. Officer Chen just stared, his mouth open. He actually did it. It's magnificent." He craned his neck. "And yep, he's got a nut, a big one." We'd spent a good hour finding the perfect giant burl of wood for him to hold. "Officers," I said, walking over, hands raised to show I wasn't a threat. "I apologize. I really do. But as I yelled at her, she gave me a 72-hour deadline, which ends tomorrow. Then she gave me this." I handed him the $500 fine. "A stop work order. She's trying to trap me. I'm just trying to get my messy pile stacked off the ground and into this rack, so I can be in compliance. We'll be done by sunrise, I swear." Krupke read the fine. He looked at the squirrel. He looked at Brenda's house, where her face was a pale ghost in the window. He handed the paper back to me and sighed the sigh of 1,000 broken souls. He turned to his car, grabbed his PA microphone, and clicked it. His voice boomed through the night. "Ma'am, Mrs. Riley, this is the police. They are on their own property. They are not having a party. They are stacking wood. It is not a crime." He paused. "Go to bed. Do not, and I mean do not, call us again, unless you see an actual, I don't know, a fire or a murder. Go to bed." He clicked it off. He looked at me. "You didn't hear this from me, but my kid's gonna love this. Get it done before sunrise." He and Chen got back in the car. As they pulled away, Chen gave us a discreet thumbs up through the window. At 5:30 a.m., just as the sky was turning a pale, bruised purple, Scrappy placed the last piece of wood on Barnaby's head. We'd done it. We stepped back. All three of us, T-Bone, Scrappy, and me, covered in sawdust, sweat, and monster energy. Barnaby was 12 feet tall. He was majestic. He was built like a tank. He was an absolute, undeniable, wood-grained marvel. And he was staring right into Brenda's bedroom window, holding his nut like a trophy. "Well," Scrappy said, cracking his back, "that's a stack of wood." I didn't sleep. I took a shower, put on a fresh pot of coffee, and sat on my front porch at 9 a.m. like a king surveying his domain. I was exhausted, but my veins were buzzing with a giddy, triumphant energy. And then, it began. First, it was the joggers. A woman running by literally tripped over her own feet, stopped and just stared. Then she pulled out her phone. Then, the morning commuters. Cars slowed down. Then, they stopped. People were rolling down their windows, taking pictures. The guy in the mail truck just parked, got out, and slowly applauded. By 9:30, my street was a parking lot. Mrs. Gable shuffled over, this time with a whole plate of Danishes. She was cackling so hard she had to lean on her walker. "Oh, David, dear," she wheezed, It's glorious. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You've given him such a proud face." A group of high school kids on their way to school stopped, and one of them yelled, "Squirrelzilla! Dude, that's sick!" They spent 10 minutes taking selfies with it, striking different poses. It was an instant local landmark. And then, at 10:15, the real prize showed up. A white van with Channel 5 News on the side. A perky reporter in a bright blue dress hopped out, followed by a cameraman who looked like he couldn't believe his luck. "Hi," the reporter said, marching right up to me, microphone in hand. "I'm Stacy with Channel 5. We got about 20 tips about this. Sir, can you please tell us what is going on?" I stood up, took a sip of my coffee, and smiled my most reasonable, aw shucks smile. "Well, Stacy," I said, pointing to the fines I had now taped to my own door for effect. "It started here. My name's Dave, and my homeowners association, run by that lady over there," I pointed, "fined me for my messy woodpile. They said it was an eyesore and attracted vermin. They gave me 72 hours to fix it." "So," Stacy said, her eyes wide, gesturing at the 12-foot behemoth, This giant squirrel, this is you fixing it?" "This is my vertical firewood storage solution," I said calmly. "The HOA president told me I had to stack it perfectly neat. So I did. His name is Barnaby." The cameraman was panning up, getting a dramatic, low-angle shot. Stacy was vibrating with journalistic glee. This was so much better than the lost dog story she was probably scheduled to cover. "And what does your HOA think of Barnaby?" she asked. Right on cue, Brenda's front door flew open. She could not resist the siren call of a television camera. This was her fatal flaw. She stormed onto her lawn, her plum-colored pantsuit already wrinkled from a night of rage sweats. "It's a violation!" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger. The cameraman swung around to catch her in all her glory. Ma'am, Stacy said, running over to her. "Are you the HOA president?" "I am. And that thing is an unpermitted, hideous rodent. It's attracting actual squirrels." And then, as if God himself had a flair for comedy, a real, live squirrel, possibly the very one who started this whole thing, skittered out from under a bush, ran right up Barnaby's massive wooden leg, climbed his back, and sat directly on top of Barnaby's head, flicking its tail. The cameraman zoomed in, capturing the squirrel on a squirrel. Stacy, to her professional credit, did not laugh, but her voice was tight. "Ma'am, it looks like it's just attracting, squirrels. But the neighbors seem to love it. We've seen a dozen people stop to take pictures. Isn't this just a creative resident expressing himself?" This broke Brenda. The logic was too much. The injustice. The camera. "Bylaws!" she sputtered, her face a terrifying shade of purple. "Fines, liens, it's not harmonious!" With a final, incoherent scream, she turned, ran back inside, and slammed the door. Stacy turned back to the camera, a perfect, polished smile on her face. Well, there you have it. A neighborhood divided over a functional storage solution. Is it a nutty idea or a work of art? Back to you in the studio, Tom. I finished my coffee. It was the best I'd ever tasted. The news story didn't just air locally. It went viral. By that evening, Barnaby the Woodpile squirrel was on news sites in England. Someone in Japan had tweeted a picture of him. A Team Barnaby Facebook page had 5,000 members. Brenda, naturally, doubled down. 2 days later, an emergency HOA meeting notice was posted. The topic: emergency vote for removal of 114 Juniper Lane structure and imposition of maximum fines and property lien. The meeting was held in the community center, a sad beige room that usually hosted scrapbooking Tuesdays. Normally, these meetings were attended by Brenda, her 2 cronies on the board, a retired couple I called the Glower twins, and maybe one other person who'd wandered in looking for the bathroom. Tonight, it was a fire hazard. The entire neighborhood was there. Mrs. Gable was in the front row. The teenagers who'd taken selfies were in the back. The mailman was there. Even Scrappy and T-Bone showed up, just to provide technical support. The Channel 5 news van was parked outside. The air was thick and tense. Brenda stood at a small podium, flanked by the Glower twins. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She banged a tiny gavel. "This emergency meeting is called to order," she snapped. "We are here to discuss the flagrant, narcissistic, and dangerous display at 114 Juniper Lane." She launched into a 10-minute speech about harmony, community standards, property values, and anarchy. "And this flagrant, childish display makes a mockery of our community standards," she finished, her voice trembling with righteous fury. "We are here to vote on an emergency $2,000 fine and to place a lien on Mr. Henderson's property until the structure is professionally removed." A low murmur went through the crowd. "Mr. Henderson," she spat, "do you have anything to say for yourself before the board votes?" This was it. I stood up, holding a manila folder, and walked to the front. "Hi, everyone. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Dave. And, yeah, I do have a few things to say." I took a deep breath. "Brenda, you're right about one thing. This is about the bylaws. So let's look at them." I pulled out the first fine. Exhibit A, the original fine. Violation 14C, unapproved, messy pile of firewood. You fined me because my wood was in a messy pile. You told me, and I quote, "As long as it's not a messy pile, I suppose it's just storage." You told me to stack it perfectly neat. I then pulled out the second fine. Exhibit B, the $500 fine. Violation 11A, unapproved permanent structure. You fined me for the metal frame I built, to stack the wood, to comply with your first fine. You can't have it both ways, Brenda. Is it a messy pile, or is it a permanent structure? It's both, she shrieked. "No, it's not," I said calmly. "It was a pile. Now it's a vertical firewood storage solution. And you can't fine me for it for 2 reasons. First, you fined me for an unapproved structure, but the bylaws define a structure as any permanent, unmovable, or fixed foundation building. Barnaby is none of those. He is, by definition, temporary storage. And I can prove it." I pulled a photo from my folder. It was a picture I'd taken that morning, of my fire pit, with a roaring fire in it. "This was this morning," I said. "I'm already using the wood. I've taken 3 logs from his tail. See? It's functional. It's my wood supply. It's not permanent. It'll be gone by spring. It's literally a wood pile. You cannot fine me for having a wood pile that is too neat." The room was dead silent. Brenda's face had gone pale. "And second," I said, turning to the crowd, Brenda keeps talking about community standards and property values. Well, let's ask the community. Mrs. Gable stood up. I, for one, love Barnaby, she declared. It's the most interesting and joyful thing to happen in this beige neighborhood in 20 years. My grandkids came to visit just to see it. The mailman stood up. My route's been 10 minutes slower, he said, because everyone stops to ask me about it. They love it. One of the teenagers in the back yelled, Lord Nuttington rules! This is not about loving it, Brenda screamed, banging her gavel. This is a violation. The board will now vote. Go ahead, I said, stepping back. Vote. Brenda looked at her Glower twins. All in favor of the $2,000 fine and the property lien? Brenda's hand shot up. The Glower twins, looking nervously at the angry crowd, slowly raised their hands. That's 3 in favor, Brenda said, a sick, triumphant smile appearing. Wait a minute, Scrappy's voice boomed from the back. This isn't a board vote. The bylaws state that any fine over $1,000 or any property lien must be approved by a majority of homeowners present at a scheduled meeting. This ain't just up to you 3. Brenda's face crumbled. He was right. She'd been so sure no one else would show up that she'd forgotten her own rules. Fine, she hissed. All homeowners present. All in favor of the fine? The 3 of them raised their hands. All opposed? A sea of hands went up. Mine, Scrappy's, Mrs. Gable's, the mailman, the teenagers, at least 40 people. The motion was crushed. The room erupted in applause. Brenda stared, her mouth open, defeated. The Channel 5 cameraman, who had been filming through the window, gave me a thumbs up. I walked back to my seat. A week later, I was in my backyard. The autumn air was crisp, and a cheerful fire was crackling in my fire pit. The wood I was using was, in fact, from the lower part of Barnaby's magnificent, bushy tail. Scrappy had been a genius. He'd designed it first in, first out, so I could take from the back without it being obvious from the street. The HOA was in chaos. Brenda was officially facing a recall vote, sponsored by Mrs. Gable. The Glower twins had already resigned from the board, citing health reasons. The Team Barnaby t-shirts, which someone started selling online, had raised over $3,000 for the local animal shelter. My house had become a minor tourist stop. I leaned back in my chair, nursing a beer, and looked over at the massive, woody squirrel looming over my fence. He was a 12-foot, 4,000-pound monument to spite. He was missing a few logs from his backside, but he looked proud. She wanted it neat, I said to the fire, taking a sip. I'd say that's about as neat as it gets. I raised my bottle to the sculpture silhouetted against the sunset. Cheers, Barnaby.